today? I hope you're doing so good because I'm doing great. Look at my hat. It says I'm on Santa's sleigh team. I don't know if you can read that, but that's what it says. I have reindeer antlers again. I'm on Santa's sleigh team. Woo woo! Welcome to Storytime and More with Miss Sparkles. That's me. And today I'm so excited because we are going to be reading stories from the Santa Claus book. The book about Santa. Because it's December, so it's Christmas. And we're going to learn all about Santa. The other day, I was sitting there watching Christmas movies, and then I thought, where did Santa come from? Where did he even come from? So I found out. And it's in this book, and we're going to learn together. We're going to learn where Santa came from. We're going to learn together, okay? Where Santa came from. Oh, and this book is by Alden Perks. He's a PhDs. So he might be pretty important. Once upon a time, when the world was much younger, a very special child was born. He came to be known as Santa Claus. And he's loved and revered all over the world. But the story begins even before then. In a quiet little village in a small country lived a handsome young carpenter named Sandy Claus. A carpenter. His wife was named Tasha, and she was the most beautiful lady in the whole land. Sandy and Tasha were very happy together. They never quarreled. They were respected by their fellow villagers. They always had plenty of food to eat. Yum. I love it. But there was one sadness in their lives, and it made their hearts ache. They wanted desperately to have a little child, but they'd never been able to. Years passed, then passed again. Sandy was elected mayor of the village. Tasha became the best friend of all the children in the town. But still they had no child of their own. Sandy's beard turned gray. Tasha began to have wisps of white in her hair, and they knew that they had become too old to have children now. Their dream would forever go unfulfilled. One night before they went to bed, Sandy looked up at the sky. Black clouds moved ponderously across the stars. "It's going to be a bad one," he said solemnly, and he latched the shutters firmly over the windows. As the night wore on, the sky turned dark and wild. The wind moaned through the trees, leaves skittered down across the dusty road. "This is a night of nights," whispered Tasha to Sandy. "It's enough to make strong men weep." The rain pelted down against their thatched roof, drowning out the words, but Tasha shared his fears and clung close to him underneath their thick quilts. The storm whipped about them for hours and hours as they tossed and turned throughout the endless night. Then, suddenly the rain stopped. The wind turned away, all was quiet. Sandy drew a deep breath. Tasha uttered a silent prayer of thankfulness. But the wail began again. Only this time it was different. It didn't rustle the thatches on the roof. It didn't wheeze around the corners of the house. It was high and shrill and very lovely. During the worst part of the storm, a beautiful woman left the baby Santa on the doorstep and then fled back to the darkness. See? I think they're going to find a baby on their doorstep. Tasha sat up in bed, urgent. "It's a baby," she said, and she jumped out of the bed and ran out the door of their hut. There, on the doorstep, was a little reddened baby, wrapped in heavy blankets, soaked to the skin, and crying lustily. She picked him up tenderly, held him to her breast, and carried him to Sandy. "A baby," she said softly. They pulled the wet blankets off. Attached to the baby's nap was a note. "I love this baby more than my life, but disaster threatens. I know you will care for him as if he were your own. Love him for me." The note was not signed. Tasha held the baby's cheeks against hers. "Something horrible has happened to your mother on this horrible night," she said, "but we will love and care for her forever. Love and care for you, for her, forever." In the morning, Tasha and Sandy had the first and last argument of their marriage. "We'll name the baby after me," Sandy announced at the breakfast table. "We'll call him Sandy." Tasha looked up sharply. "No," she said. "I've waited so long. We must call him Tosh, after me." "It will be Sandy," Sandy said again, his voice rising louder. "No, Tosh," Tosh answered, her voice even louder. They ate the rest of their meal in silence, avoiding glances, refusing to speak. The baby began to cry, and Tasha went to care for him. Sandy slammed the door when he left the hut to go to work. All day long, Tosh thought of the problem. "We both love this baby, but we love each other too. I was wrong. We should name him Sandy." And all day long, Sandy thought of the problem as he sawed and hammered his wood. "I love Tosh more than myself," he thought. "I've been so wrong. We'll name him Tosh." When he went home that night, Tasha met him at the door. "We'll name him she started to say, but Sandy interrupted. "Tosh," he said. Then they looked at each other and laughed. "Santosh?" Sandy said. "What kind of name is that?" "No kind of name for our son," Tasha said. "Why don't we name him Santa, after both of us?" Santa was a good boy, helpful to his mother and obedient to his father. He made friends quickly as he grew, and soon he was a favorite among his fellows. But the adults in the village were worried. "His ears are a little pointed," said one. "I'll bet he has some elf blood in him." "I don't trust him," said another. "Never trust half elf, that's what I always say." "His cheeks are too rosy," gossiped a third, "just like an elf's." When Santa walked into the village, the people called him names and were rude to him. "Don't come near me, elf boy. I don't want your evil magic around me." "How mean." "Get away from here, imp." "Don't you dare look at me with your elvish evil eye, you pointed-eared twit." More than once, Santa ran home crying to his mother. "I'm sorry," Tasha said. "I'm sorry," and she stroked his golden hair. When he grew older, Tasha explained. "People are foolish," she said. "They fear elves because elves are different, but just by looking in your face, I can tell they are wonderful people." Well, here's a picture of the baby on the porch. See that? There's Sandy getting the baby. And this is people pointing and being mean to Santa. While the adults were being mean, the children were becoming Santa's friends more and more. They didn't care that his ears pointed a little, and they didn't care that his cheeks were rosy. All they knew that he was a loving friend and loved him back. When Santa became a man, he moved away from the village to another land, far away. He became a famous carpenter, with kings and princes coming to him for carpentry work. But everywhere he went, he saw meanness. People beating their children, drinking or gambling away their money while their children went hungry, buying a fine new horse or carriage while their children wore rags. Of course, most parents were wonderful with their children, but when Santa saw the mean ones, he wept, and he remembered how his friends had loved him as a boy when all the adults were horrible. "I must help these poor children," he said to himself, and he began to save his money. On the next gift day, Santa took special gifts to all the poor children and left them in secret during the night. The next day, the whole town was alive with talk of the miracle that had happened. Some mysterious being had left gifts for many, many children in the night. Santa smiled to himself, and he felt happier than he ever had before. The next year, Santa gave out even more gifts. And the following year, he gave still more, and he noticed that the people in the town began to change. No one knew who was giving the gifts, so everyone was kind to everyone else. My wicked neighbor might be the generous one in secret. Each of the townspeople thought, I'd better treat him much better. They were nicer to their children, too. If someone thinks they're too special or that special, they thought, I should be kinder to them. Before long, Santa was giving gifts to every child in the town. I want every one of them to feel loved by someone, he wrote in a letter to Sandy and Tasha. I want every one of them to have as much love as you gave me. As Santa gave more and more, he wanted to share with even more children. He wanted to give to every child in the land and in the neighboring land and all the lands beyond that. And over the years, he's been able to do just that. Now the little boy who was left on the doorstep in the storm, the little boy who was half elf, ridiculed by the people in his town, now that little boy is a man. Now he's Santa Claus, the most famous, most loved man in the whole world. The end. That's where Santa came from. How exciting and interesting. People were mean to Santa one time. That's why we aren't supposed to be mean to anybody, huh? That's why we have to be very nice to everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today on Storytime and More with Miss Sparkles. That's me. And remember, be brave, my little one.